So today, I'm going to talk about a couple things. As we go back to school, we're going to talk about just what generally that looks like, what a hybrid model looks like, what the CDC's guidelines for going back to school healthily according to the continuum of risk prescribe, and how teachers feel about going back to school, and what you can do if you are a parent or a student to help make your teacher's life easiest and make the transition back to the hybrid model and through the pandemic the best it can be for both your learning and the teacher's sanity, which is important to all of us to preserve.
The president believes schools should be open. Teachers want schools to be open. Families want schools to be open, but we want to do it safely.
So a lot of folks have asked me, what is the deal with folks going back to school, the hybrid model? Even though SAT is my domain, as an organization, we are doing professional development with a number of teachers in high schools. And so I obviously have kind of an insider perspective from what these teachers are telling me. Obviously, every school is different. A lot of the schools that we work with on the Eastern Seaboard are going back somewhere in the March vicinity, but many of them are going back only partially. So for instance, in one of the high schools we're working with, only 9th and 12th graders are going back. 10th and 11th graders will stay remote. My understanding is that when going back is presented as an option, it's generally presented as a hybrid option. Like, you're not going to be in school all 5 days. You're going to be in school some of the 5 days. Some of the issues that they're not sure exactly how will work, and these are questions that I'm hearing from the teachers that I work with, is what's going to happen if we have some of the kids in the class and some of the kids at home? Because the teacher can't really be making eye contact with the kids in the class exclusively and not with the kids at home, right? Because then that encourages a population that is already fairly disconnected, the at-home population, to be even more sort of out of it. And so what it sounds like is going to happen is that every kid is going to have their laptop and will be in the classroom with the teacher, but they'll be interacting with the teacher through the laptop. Another thing that one of the teachers said to me is, I don't know that kids are going to be moving around the school the way they usually do, because if we're trying to keep people in small groups and sort of sharing germs with as few people as possible, we can't have the sort of normal passing structure that we do, which means that teachers are going to be sort of glorified babysitters, which, as I'm sure you can imagine, the teachers that I'm working with are not super excited about, because they're like, well, my job is just to keep this group of kids quiet while I give my lesson. Another thing that I know is coming up is the lunch period, because teachers, in many of the contracts with the union, teachers aren't allowed or aren't supposed to supervise lunch. So in order to deal with the lunch problem, right, kids at home have to eat lunch and kids at school have to eat lunch, and there aren't enough paraprofessionals and staff members to oversee lunch in groups of 10, which I guess is the group size that many school districts are going for. So they have to do what's called an instructional lunch. So the teachers kind of teach and the kids are allowed to eat, but also pay attention. So from our perspective, and when I say our, I'm talking about the perspective of us as an organization and the teachers with whom I work, who are sort of facing this myriad of challenges that seems to change daily based on different responses, feedback that they're getting from their districts. Nobody is really sure what to happen, and this is what is going to happen. And this is like a constantly evolving beast. So in terms of folks at home who are wondering what's happening in their school district, know that everything I said and a million other options may be true for you. Your best bet is to make sure that you're engaging in a dialogue with the teacher and finding out what the teacher thinks that he, she, they will need from your student. So this is a time to be more in touch rather than less. Yes, you don't want to overwhelm the teacher by making him or them focus on a million things besides what that person already has to focus on from school, from their district, from their department. But if you make it clear that you're here to sort of make sure that your student is responsible for doing their work and making sure that they're in sync with what's being asked of them, that will actually take a huge load off the teacher's shoulders. Because what I'm hearing a lot from teachers is that parents are kind of showing up and saying, hey, this is way too much work for my kid. And the teachers are like, wow, this is literally 1,000 times less work than what we give them the rest of the year when we're in regular school. How could this be too much? So teachers are very frustrated because they feel like they have all of these different demands that they're trying to meet, right? They have often lowered their standards because kids just aren't doing as much work as they usually do. So they don't want to lower their standards, but they have no choice. Otherwise, 59% of their class is not going to be passing, which is a problem. They're already dealing with a lot of unengaged kids at home who maybe aren't turning on their cameras, maybe are not giving 100% of their time or focus to the teacher, not turning on their mics, all that kind of stuff. So what you can do is really sit down with your child and have a conversation about what it must feel like to be the teacher and what it must feel like to try to impart knowledge according to a set of standards that you are being given that is constantly changing. And everybody in your class seems like they don't care. You have no way of making relationships, connections, sort of the friendships that come up, that spring up between a teacher and student. And you're just looking at all of these black screens and you don't know who's paying attention. You don't know who is also playing video games. You don't know who turned on their computer and then went back to bed to take a nap. So let your child know that by being attentive, responsive, whether it's in the chat or by turning on their camera, that really means a lot to the teacher, and it will also serve the students. I think a lot of students see this pandemic time as a time when nothing is getting learned, so they don't have to work very hard. And that can be true, but that is what the students make of it, right? So if the students are like, hey, this is a time when, online learning, maybe I don't feel like I'm learning a lot at my school, but instead I'm going to go really deep and teach myself about something that I've never done before. It's not like there aren't a million resources, to say nothing of like Khan Academy, right, in the world that will allow you to go practice math or learn more about English or learn more about good writing. Maybe this is the time to commit yourself to reading 12 great books of the Western canon. Whatever you want to do, you can take advantage of this time and do it, or you can just play video games, right? So if you feel like you are not getting a lot out of this time, or if your child feels like he, she, they are not getting a lot out of this time, then take this opportunity to get a lot out of it and challenge yourself and keep in constant contact with your teacher. And one of the ways to make this easy is to give your teacher updates, but don't necessarily make the teacher write back to you. So if you're a parent and your child has been like, I'm super bored in English class, I feel like we're not learning anything, so I have decided that I'm going to read these 5 books in the next 3 months, send your teacher a quick email and be like, hey, this is what my child has decided to do. No need to respond, just wanted to keep you in the loop. The teacher will then be relieved that your child is taking some responsibility upon him or themselves, will be informed, and will know that your child does want to be called on and does want to be active and participatory in the class. And if all of the parents did that, trust me, it would make teaching a heck of a lot easier. Remember that if you are frustrated with your child's teacher, remember that your teacher is also frustrated with the set of circumstances in which he, she, they are currently being forced to teach. It's not an easy situation. And teachers are being asked to really risk their lives by coming back to school. Not all teachers have been vaccinated. Some teachers are being asked to come back before they've been vaccinated. That scares them. If you happen to be a teacher, but you live with an older family member or someone who's immunocompromised or someone who's on a lot of medications or has a lot of underlying health conditions, just because the teacher is young and spry and agile doesn't necessarily mean that they're not worried about some family member at home. So understand that, yes, this is a terrifying time for everyone, your teacher included, and the teacher is doing his or their absolute best to make sure that your student is still learning, is staying engaged in class, and that the teacher is meeting all of the many litany of standards that he, she, they are being given by their department, their school district, their superintendent, and any number of other folks.
The president has prioritized, believes that it should be a priority for teachers to be vaccinated. He also, though, believes that even with vaccinations for teachers or for any American, that there are a number of other mitigation steps that are important to take. The wearing of masks, social distancing, ventilation. These are all factors that are important for Americans and also for the reopening of schools.
School systems are adhering to the CDC guidelines for schools, and I'll walk you through those a little bit. A lot of it is just deciding how to open for in-person learning, whether it stays completely virtual, if it moves to hybrid, or it goes completely in person. Most school systems, most school districts with which we are working are looking at some kind of hybrid model. We know that students who have learning challenges, learning differences benefit especially from person-to-person interaction. And I've heard anecdotally so many parents, especially those with kids with learning differences, who say that when their kids are going to school, it's like a cloud has lifted off their face. Just the ability to have a place to go, a destination to go in the morning, to go there, interact with other people, and come back home really makes 1,000% difference. As schools are making this decision about how to return, a lot of what they're weighing is the needs of students. And that's for everybody, right? Because everybody needs, we as humans need a certain amount of social time per day, as well as trying to make sure that we're doing it in as risk-free or risk-reduced way as possible. So the hybrid learning model is associated with some risk along the continuum of risk. Least risk, obviously, is virtual. Most risk is going back to completely normal. As schools are deciding how to open for in-person learning, they are taking actions to reduce the spread of the virus that causes COVID-19. So that some risk is the hybrid learning model. Most teachers and students are participating in virtual learning, and some students and teachers engage in in-person learning. We have small in-person classes, activities, and events. Cohorting is rigorously applied, which means that the group that you travel with is the group that you continue traveling with. So normally when you pass from one class to another, you may come in contact with 36 new people each period. That is the opposite of what will happen. So you'll stay with your small cohort. We try not to share objects, try not to mix groups, following all steps to protect themselves and others at all times. Things like hand hygiene and respiratory etiquette. So that's sneezing into your elbow rather than into your hand, making sure that you're always wearing a mask, making sure that you're keeping your hands disinfected with hand sanitizer or washing them with soap and water. And remember, a good wash with 20 seconds of soap and water is good enough to get rid of the germs. Making sure that there are adequate supplies. I know schools in which I have worked for many years have not had adequate supplies. And I know for a lot of schools, that's one of the big problems. It's like, wow, we have to find a lot of money in the budget to pay for all of the things that we now need that we didn't need before. Also putting up signs and having messages, gentle reminders to folks about what is appropriate can make a tremendous difference. Maintaining healthy environments, making sure that we have enough staff to adequately clean and disinfect a classroom when a group of kids has been in it before the next group comes in. Improving ventilation. I've read online that just opening the windows in a classroom can really make the difference between circulating air and non-circulating air, but that means kids are going to have to wear puff coats and like warm sweaters, certainly in the Northeast where it's cold. Making sure that we're not sharing objects, making sure that we're respecting physical barriers and guides. That means that if there's like a panel between you and the other person, that you make sure to respect that panel. Being mindful of communal spaces and making sure that they're disinfected between cohorts, and being aware with food service that things aren't handled by multiple people, that everybody who is touching food is wearing gloves and a mask, because it's never been as important as it is right now.